Hello there and welcome or welcome back to Creative Autistic. Today I'm going to be talking about imposter syndrome and how I'm trying to deal with it as a late diagnosed autistic person. I was diagnosed earlier this year at the age of 49 as autistic level 1, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster in terms of trying to kind of come to terms with this huge amount of information. And I think many autistics who are diagnosed later in life kind of go through this, really. For me, it's almost like my brain is constantly telling me that, you've been this way for 50 years. Why is it that you suddenly need a diagnosis of autism to just make sense of yourself? Or you're not deserving of being autistic, or having the diagnosis of being autistic, because other people are more deserving of it, and all this awful stuff that our brains are often bombarding ourselves with, and it's a lot to try and deal with, really. So today I wanted to discuss the 4 ways in which I'm learning to deal with this imposter syndrome, because I don't want it. Before I start on the main content of this video, however, it is absolutely boiling today, so if I end up in a sweaty mess at some point, that's going to be the reason why. But anyway, let's get started. So the first way I'm dealing with imposter syndrome is focusing in on the differences between me and other people. And this has been a tricky one, because I'm home-based due to a chronic illness I have called MCAS, and it basically is a dodgy immune system, so I don't see people very often other than my partner. So this has been quite a difficult one, really, because I can't really compare myself to other people very often because the opportunity doesn't happen often. But when it does, I really try and zone in on my autistic traits. Like, for instance, yesterday, Ian and I met up with some friends, and they're actually Ian's friends, but because I've known them for so long, they, feel like my friends too. Previously, we would have met these guys in a pub, and we would have all got drunk together and had a great time, because they're really kind of gregarious people, really lovely. And because of my MCAS, I can't drink anymore. And alcohol was always integral to my social life in previous years, and I relied on it so much in order just to be social with other people. And I have done a video on this, which I'll link below. So because of my MCAS, I have to be really COVID cautious. So we met in a local park, and there was actually a fun fair going on as well. And it worked out really well because they've got a young daughter who was just delighted to see this fun fair. But I was really focusing in on my differences and how awkward I felt at times. I didn't have the social lubricants of alcohol available, so I just felt my conversation was almost a bit more stilted. I was just very aware of myself and my posture and just my awkward self, really, and it's become a lot more apparent since I've not been able to drink. I don't know if other people have noticed it, they probably have, but for me, I can certainly tell the difference. And because we're at a fun fair, there was just loads of noise and flashing lights everywhere, lots of people, and I soon felt overstimulated. And I think Ian had noticed at this point that I was probably showing signs of, kind of struggling a bit. So he said, "We're going to go home now, guys," which I was really thankful for, because I didn't want to say it myself, really. So it was really interesting, really trying to zone in on my autistic behaviours, or the clues as to why I'm autistic. And I'm finding that a really useful way of trying to beat this imposter syndrome. The second way I'm learning to deal with imposter syndrome is the amazing autism community here on YouTube. Aren't you all just so brilliant? I am just so thankful of the online community, and specifically the community here on YouTube, because it's been so welcoming, just so inclusive, and I don't know about you, but I'm just learning so much from other people. And I found that by sharing my experiences of being autistic, because we're all really different, aren't we? We experience autism in very different ways. And I've found that, you know, by putting out my thoughts and experiences into the ether, and to have other autistic people say to me, this really resonates with me because I've got a very similar experience. And I'm finding this really useful in particular because, as I say, I don't see very many people. So I found that the autistic community here on YouTube has become really important to me, which I absolutely was not expecting at all. I just thought when I was diagnosed, I'll upload a few videos about my experience just to really try and get all of this off my chest, really, more than anything. And I wasn't really expecting many people to watch my videos at all. I just felt that the theme of autism wasn't relevant to my creative channel, so I thought, you know, I'll put out a few videos on a different channel just so people from my creative channel can go over and watch them if they want to. And genuinely, I just thought it would be people coming across from my creative channel that would watch these videos. So it's just lovely that other autistic people are watching them and finding meaning in them, really. And as you're no doubt aware, I think it can be really difficult trying to find other autistic people on YouTube that you kind of resonate with. And particularly for me as a middle-aged woman, it was really difficult trying to find women of my own age, really, and certainly still, actually. So it was really lovely to be introduced to Autistic Jenny. She's another creator of around my age, I think, and she's based in the US, but she makes really great content. And Jenny's got a really lovely style to her videos. It's very lo-fi, but it's almost reminiscent of American indie movies, which is something that I enjoy. So yeah, she's been so welcoming, actually. I've been really grateful. So I'll leave Jenny's channel linked below. Another creator's content who I enjoy is Woodshed Theory. She's a lot younger than me, but she does like a weekly catch-up video, and it's almost like catching up with a friend, which is a really nice vibe, actually, isn't it? And I think Woodshed Theory is pretty well known within the autistic community, but yeah, she's just got such a lovely way of talking to the viewer, really. I really enjoy her content. And if you're anything like me, it takes me a while to get to know YouTube creators. So, you know, I take them one at a time, really, because it's just so easy to be overwhelmed by a lot of creators, I find. So I'm just taking it kind of one step at a time. But I've just started watching content by Aniva, and she's another autistic creator. And Aniva, again, is much younger than myself, but I just really enjoy her vibe. She's got such a lovely way of connecting with her audience. So I'm looking forward to getting to know her and her content better. And I'd of course love to hear your recommendations for autistic creators down below, and in particular autistic people from minority groups, because I want to hear from a whole host of autistic voices, and the only way to do that sometimes is by getting recommended them from other people, because the algorithm really doesn't do its thing on YouTube for small creators. So yeah, let me have your recommendations down below. The third way I'm learning to deal with imposter syndrome as an autistic person is reframing memories through my autistic eyes. Now then, this is quite a difficult one to explain, but I'm going to do my best. So I, as a newly diagnosed autistic adult, feels really responsible for the autistic girl that I once was, and I want to reach out in time to almost be her primary caregiver. And this may well sound really odd, but I would really recommend a show called Russian Doll. And I absolutely love this show. Who doesn't love Natasha Lyonne? She's just so awesome, isn't she? But this show in particular is possibly my favourite ever TV show because I've watched it so many times and I just am in awe of how good it is. And the protagonist, Nadia, is a woman who's 36 years old, and in the second series, I don't want to give any real spoilers, but she becomes the primary caregiver to her younger self at one point. And I was just dumbfounded to see this on TV because it's something that I've always felt, it's something that I've always wanted to do because I just feel so sorry for my younger self and I really wish I could have helped her out. And I know it sounds like I'm having a complete existential crisis, but yeah, I really wish I could go back in time really as another version of myself to offer some support. I really struggled as a young autistic girl, not knowing I was autistic, but knowing that I was different. And I just used to wish that I had another person in my life that could come and take care of me. Somebody who knew and understood me as I was. And that person has now become my adult self. And I probably sound bonkers, you know, but that's how I feel. And that's why Russian Doll became so important to me. It was amazing to see this thing that I've just always had going around in my head put onto the screen in such a sensitive way. It's just, yeah, brilliant. And I really would recommend that you watch this show. It's on Netflix and it's amazing. And I bet you'll watch it more than once because I don't even know how many times I've seen this show, but it's brilliant. So the points that I'm trying to make here, albeit in a really long-winded way, is if I now don't advocate for my younger self, which starts, I think, by believing she was autistic, am I not then just letting her down like other people did? I just feel that it's my duty to acknowledge that I'm autistic for both my adult and younger self. And like me, I've gone off at a slight tangent again, but basically now I'm trying to reframe the memories that I had as this lost little girl and understanding that I was autistic and that's why I struggled with making friends. It's why I was often considered naive. It's why I'd struggled to kind of do new stuff. I was autistic and it's really helping me to, yeah, try and get rid of this imposter syndrome. I'm also trying to find ways to reframe loads of my experiences as an adult without realising I was autistic. And of course, I could give you a million examples of just memories that I've had of, just feeling awkward or feeling embarrassed or essentially beating myself up about why I've not been able to do something, why I've struggled in different areas. And I'm really now learning how to forgive myself essentially, because that's such an important part of the process, isn't it? And the fourth way I'm learning to deal with and hopefully get rid of imposter syndrome is reminding myself that I have things going on that are comorbid with autism. So I have MCAS, which is mast cell activation syndrome. It's basically a dodgy immune system and it's really common in autistic people, and it's the same with POTS. And I was diagnosed with POTS earlier this year, but I now know why I've struggled with POTS symptoms throughout my whole life. For instance, I would always struggle in school assemblies. We would be forced to go and stand in one spot and listen to a teacher drone on about whatever. And I would feel faint really soon into standing still. But of course, nobody really knew what POTS was back then, so I'd be kind of fidgeting and I'd be moving from one foot to another constantly to fight off feeling faint. And it makes me so frustrated now to think of trying to make a child with POTS stand in one place, because it's the complete opposite of what a person with POTS should be doing. And I just get so angry at the thought of the education system in the 70s and 80s, because it was just so difficult for kids that were autistic, and they were demonised for their differences. It was cruelty. I'm just glad now that there is more awareness of autism and ADHD, etc. for children, but things still aren't great. You know, there's still a lot of work to do in raising awareness of autism and what autism looks like in every autistic person, because we're all different, aren't we? We all have different traits, and I just think there's a lot of work still to be done. So there we have it. There's the 4 ways I'm learning how to hopefully get rid of imposter syndrome. It is an ongoing process. It's about 6 months now, almost, since I was diagnosed, and I'm certainly in a better place now than I was even a few months ago. So it's essentially an ongoing process. I think what it all boils down to really is internalised ableism. You know, the media's done such a great job, hasn't it, on telling us all what disability is and what it isn't. And interestingly, I have never had any qualms with other people describing themselves as disabled if they have invisible disabilities, etc. But for whatever reason, I'm having real difficulties in believing myself at times, and it's just really hard, isn't it? Why are we so hard on ourselves at times? So I would love to hear your experiences of imposter syndrome. I'd love to know if you can relate to any of the ways that I've trying to manage it that I've discussed in today's video, or if there's any other techniques that you've found useful as well. I would love to hear them. And I'd love to hear if you're still having difficulties with imposter syndrome and you've just not been able to deal with it yet. If you are struggling with imposter syndrome, it may well be worth you looking at the Embrace Autism website, because they've got a really great section on this. And for the high masking autistics among us, it's really worthwhile doing their CAT-Q test, as I think it's a really good way to remind yourself how different you are from neurotypical people. Thankfully, I've not ended up in a big sweaty mess, so that's a result. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.